All right, let's try this again. This is our first test of actually hopefully successfully using a video. So if you guys could raise your hand, can you hear that audio okay coming through our computer for the video? Yay!
Woohoo!
Good. Okay.
Success. See, we're learning something too.
All right. Technology is forever changing. Don't you love it? So we're going to start that again just so we have the full thing on our video here to share with everybody. So let me go back to the presentation here, and we'll finish watching that clip. And that's going to kick off our presentation today. So thank you all for being patient.
Just out of curiosity, why do they bully? What's the point of it? Why do you find joy in taking innocent people and finding a way to be mean to them? It's not okay.
What do they say to you?
They make fun of my nose. They call me ugly. They say I have no friends.
What'd they do to you at lunch?
Poured milk on me and put a hand down my clothes. Threw bread at me.
Is it just you?
Yep.
Or is it other kids too that feel that way?
Say it's other kids too.
How's that make you feel?
I don't like that they do it to me, and I for sure don't like that they do it to other people, because it's not okay. People that are different don't need to be criticized about it, because it's not their fault. But if you are made fun of, just don't let it bother you. Just stay strong, I guess. It's hard. But it'll probably get better one day.
I seen that on the news. That was really
Pretty emotional clip right there, and I think that I have to give that kid credit, because at the end he's not even just thinking of himself, he's thinking about others and how it hurts others as well. And so I think that's a pretty awesome film. But today I want you to think a little bit before we get started into the rest of the presentation here about that clip, and think about how in your school, do you have kids that might go home feeling like this every day? Or do you have kids that might cause other kids to go home feeling like this every day? So I want you to think about that. And I'm going to give you just a minute, because we're going to be relating back to those kids as we talk about the rest of this presentation. So if you could get a couple of those kids in mind.
Yeah, let's do that. 9.
Okay, so today our presentation is about bullying and identifying it, defining it, what to do about it. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you about the resource that I utilized to gather a lot of this information. I've visited this site multiple times. There's just so much information on stopbullying.gov. So if you have any questions or you want more resources in relation to any of this information, please take time to visit that website. So first of all, we're going to talk about what is the definition of bullying and what are some behaviors that resemble bullying. So I'm going to give you, I have a timer on here, and so that we practice good wait time, I'm going to use this timer to count down. I want you to discuss in your groups, and if there's just one of you in the room, I want you to take this time to think about your definition of bullying. And if you need to, go ahead and write it down, because we're going to share out. But think about your definition of bullying and what behaviors resemble bullying, or what behaviors you think resemble bullying. Just mute it. Oops. And instead of playing, it flipped my slides. So 1 minute here. There we go. All right, so wait time, let's come back. Doesn't 1 minute seem like forever when you're presenting or when you're sitting there waiting? Let's go ahead and share out. Again, the two questions were, what do you think the definition of bullying is, and what are some behaviors that resemble bullying to you? So I'm gonna just call in a few people. If you want me to unmute your screen, let me know. Otherwise, you can unmute it yourself. So let's talk to what our first lynch site. Do you guys, what is your definition for bullying? Okay, try again. I was able to unmute you. Go ahead. What is your definition of bullying?
Bullying can be not only the saying things to them, but also just looks and laughs, or the way they look at them and look, whispering with someone else and looking at them. That's also a form of bullying.
Yeah, I like how you included the non-physical or the non-evident parts where it's a look. That's great. Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm not sure who we have, but it says R-U-R-I-B-E. Is that Stuart? Oh, and I'm unable to mute them. So, Cindy, would you like to share what your definition of bullying is, or if do you have anything to add to forms of bullying?
I think that's the Butte site, probably.
Yeah, we're here. We're just thinking. Do you have anything different to say?
Are there any behaviors that exude bullying to you that you could add?
Name calling.
Okay. All right.
Not including.
What was that one? I'm sorry.
Kind of not including ever.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a good one. We see that often, I think.
How about at the middle school, Norfolk Middle School you're in, and you might see some different behaviors from the older kids than elementary sites might see.
What are you?
A lot of times they're just doing it to make themselves feel better, or like constantly picking on someone.
Yeah, I think sometimes our bullies are very insecure themselves, and that although that they are trying to show that they're confident, they're really not, they don't have high self-esteem themselves.
Or they've been bullied at some point.
Yep.
Now they do it also.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of risk factors for not only the bullies themselves, but the people being bullied. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Does anybody else want to share before we go back to the presentation? All right. Okay, great. Thank you guys for participating in that. I'm going to go back to the presentation here to move on. The bullying.gov definition of bullying, when we flip through these slides, there we go, is rather lengthy, but I highlighted a few of the terms that are really important here. And first of all, bullying is unwanted and aggressive. Obviously, the recipients of the bullying don't want that type of attention, and it's aggressive behavior. It causes a power imbalance between the person who is bullying and the person being bullied. And one of the big important points here is that it is repeated, or it has the potential to be repeated. And what that means is that the intent of it is not a one shot and we're done. We're not just teasing, we're not just playing around. It's we're trying to hurt someone, and doing it over and over makes that more profound, and it actually is in the true definition of bullying when it is repeated over and over. Some of us can see, for example, on the playground, we may see these types of behaviors happening every once in a while. And do we necessarily label that as bullying? Not always, but it's also important to make note of those and make note of the kids that are involved so that you can pay attention to that a little bit more.
And I think bullying has become kind of a buzzword. It's something that we've really, taken a closer look at, which we should. However, we have to be careful when that happens that we don't overuse that word and where it doesn't fit the definition. So when something happens as an isolated incident, there's an altercation on the playground, or kids have a disagreement at lunch. Yeah, one kid might be being mean to the other in that situation, but unless it's repetitive, it probably isn't true bullying.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in order to better understand bullying, we have to actually recognize that there's different types of bullying. So the first type that we're going to talk about is verbal bullying. And one of the types of verbal bullying is teasing. And I think teasing and taunting kind of go on the same wavelength when you talk about verbal bullying. And a lot of times when kids are teasing each other, and I happen to experience this personally from coaching volleyball my first year. I was a freshman volleyball coach. The kids would constantly, as they said it, I was just teasing, or I was teasing them, implying that it was okay with the person on the receiving end too. And it was interesting because I was upset by the teasing. I could tell that it was directed generally towards one person more often than others. And they didn't play so well together as a team until I put my foot down and said that there would be no more of that if they wanted to have a volleyball coach, and actually stormed out one day because they were still teasing each other. And when we actually got through those teasing and taunting episodes, they actually played pretty decent as a team. So it's amazing how much of an effect that can have on not only one person, but an entire team. So,
and also I think that that's a big excuse used by the bully a lot. I was just teasing them. Oh, they don't mind. They don't care that I do this. Well, that's an excuse. Unless everybody walks away feeling really good, it's not okay. And it's just adding to negativity all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the name calling part too. I mean, you'll see this. I saw this a lot at the high school level, where there would be a known nickname for a certain student, and it was used to basically taunt other students and the kids would always say, well, that's their nickname. It's been their nickname since 5th grade. Well, you could obviously see that that kid was not appreciative of that nickname and did not accept that nickname. But again, as Steph talked about earlier, we have to be cautious of that. Because is it really bullying? Is it something that the kids are doing that tease each other back and forth? Some of those things are hard to really figure out. Another type of bullying is the social bullying. And this one happens, well, it happens a lot. It happens even in the elementary classrooms, where you can leave someone out on purpose, telling other children not to be friends with somebody, spreading rumors about somebody, or embarrassing somebody intentionally in public. And the part about all of these is they happen in places that you guys probably have to take control of a lot. Places like the playground, lunch, on the bus, places where there's not a lot of extra adult supervision. And for example, my daughter Eden was left out on the playground a couple times by friends and saying that they didn't want to play with her. And we talked about if she thought that was bullying. She's 6 years old. And she said, no, Mom, they've just done it a couple times. I think I'll be okay. And after Christmas break, everything went back to normal. But she didn't recognize it as bullying herself, but it was good to have that conversation with her. And that, the teachers or the playground people I'm sure knew nothing about what was happening or what was going on.
And kind of looking at our graphics on this page too, it makes me think of social media. And that's a place that it can be tricky, that sometimes adults aren't there supervising, you know, and can be an issue for students.
Okay, the next kind is physical bullying. And these are the things that are, if you're actually there in the midst of it, it's pretty obvious. Hitting, kicking, punching, spitting, anything physical that would be a repetitive action to a person. And that does often happen where we don't see those types of things. Usually we just hear about them. So we're going to watch a popularized show or video on bullying. Can anybody tell me which movie this is from? Yay!
Back to the
yeah, I knew
Future.
someone would
Ding,
get
ding,
it.
I think that Biff in this clip is the quintessential bully that we you know, we kind of all have our minds you know, drawn to when we think about bullying.
While we watch this, I want you to think about what type of bullying is being portrayed in this clip right here. I tried to cut it down and it wouldn't let me, so give me just a second. There we go.
What do you think you're doing?
Biff.
Hey, I'm talking to you, McFly, you Irish bug.
Oh, hey, Biff. Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, you got my homework finished, McFly?
Well, actually, I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think, McFly, think. I gotta have time to recopy it. You realize what would happen if I hand in my homework in your handwriting? I'd get kicked out of school. You wouldn't want that to happen, would you? Would you?
Well, now, of course not,
No,
Biff. I wouldn't
no.
want that to happen.
What are you looking at, butthead?
Hey, Biff, get hold of this guy's life preserver. Dork thinks he's gonna drown.
Yeah. So, how about my homework, McFly?
Okay, Biff. Well, I'll finish that on up tonight, and then I'll bring it over first thing tomorrow morning.
Hey, not too early. I sleep in Sundays. Oh, McFly, your shoes untied. Don't be so gullible, McFly.
Okay.
I don't want to see you in here again.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, so obviously George is trying really hard to show that him and Biff are friends. He's not taking any offense to his taunting, and he's passing off his threats as a joke. But Biff is really trying to exude that they are not friends and that he is in control, or he has the power. So that is another key component of bullying, is to portray that another person is in control or has more power over another. So what type of bullying did you see in this clip? Does anybody want to take a shot at? There's a couple, actually.
I think I heard someone say physical. Yeah, we saw him hit him, a little knock on his head, very physical. What else? Very verbal. Verbal also, yeah.
Physical, verbal, yeah. Those are all examples of those types of sorry, I'm trying to fast forward here.
So I think also, though, that this is very overt bullying that we see all the time. But we have to remember that sometimes kids are really sneaky about their bullying too.
Yeah, and that's what oftentimes we don't see it happen. We just hear about it in the end. And so later on, we're going to talk about some strategies that we can use to help kids realize what's going on and what to do about it. Let's take a few minutes here. I want you to think about, in your position, where have you seen bullying, and in any form or any type? Where have you seen it? And do you have a district policy that kind of helps you address what you should do if you see bullying in your district? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to talk about it. so does anyone want to share, where have you seen bullying within your district, and what does your school have in place to help you with that?
Very much when they're at recess.
Yeah, recess, like kind of unsupervised times, right? I mean, sure, someone's out there, but you're not right there hearing everything every kid says. And so, I think bullies look for those times that they can get away with it.
And I'd ask you, if we could see everybody, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you've seen this out on the playground, and I bet most of you would probably show me your hands, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember as a teacher, there would be multiple times that I would see that happen out at recess. Are there other locations in your school that you've seen this or heard of this happening to other students?
Walking in line.
Yeah, walking in line. Yeah, isn't that funny?
Sometimes it's really good to train a class to lead, to have a leader that leads them where you need to go, and the teacher is actually at the end of the line, because then you can see a little bit more of what's going on. Or I would try to walk in the middle of my line, or at times I had a class of maybe 25 kids, and especially when we turned a corner, I'd stay at that corner so that I could see both sets of kids, because you never know when things like that'll happen.
Yeah, and as a teacher, I would always make my students practice that, probably more than they should, about how they were supposed to walk in line. And I can't say that it completely stopped any type of physical bullying or anything while they were in line, but it did help. Anybody else want to share?
Lunchroom.
Definitely. Those social times, more talking, more a chance to leave someone out if there aren't assigned seats. Some schools do assigned seats at lunch so that people don't have that chance to leave someone out.
Right, and usually in a place where there's one of you and 50 of them, right? Because it's easier to do and not be seen.
Mm-hmm. Boyd County, I think that maybe you guys have some teachers and paras on buses with kids, is that right? Yeah, I'm seeing heads shake. Yeah, I think the bus is another place that we can see this sometimes happen. Again, one of those unstructured times that maybe there's a little bit more time to, that kids are alone and no one's monitoring them directly.
Okay, does anybody have anything within their district or anything that's been shared with you that's written up by your district, or a policy or anything that helps you, I don't want to say deal with, but helps you associate with bullying and help kids with bullying?
We have the BIST program.
Yep, okay. BIST definitely has that component in it. Do you want to share a little bit about what BIST does to help kind of combat the bullying part?
We do a lot of triaging with the students.
Yeah.
Triage is something that you do before the problem's going to happen. So if you have a kid who maybe has been accused of some bullying, you might take them aside before recess, if that's where it's been happening, and have them talk through what they're going to do and how they're going to stay positive at recess that day.
And this site, and I'll share that with you here in a little bit, the site that I talked about gives you some wonderful vocabulary, words, and terms to share with the kids who may not really recognize their behavior as being bullying. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Is there anybody else that wants to share what you are doing or what your district might be doing to help combat this bullying in your district? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. So on stopbullying.gov, their research has shown that a significant % of bullying happens in places like on the playground and on the bus, just like Stephanie and I talked about, those unstructured time where there's limited adults and multiple kids in the same, usually enclosed space. But on the playground, it's a little, it can happen because they're all spread out and you can't keep your eyes on everybody. But the one thing that kind of got me on this site was that the majority of bullying happens in, around, or in relation to school. That's really a sad statistic for me, I think. But with social network, that kind of has branched out probably a little bit more. But unfortunately, kids are using social network aspects of school to do the bullying also. So we got to be aware of that. Now,
and I think that just reiterates again a place where parents, teachers, adults are not directly watching all the time. So, that takes a significant bit of education for the parents too, as well as all the school personnel.
Right. And this site actually that I've been taking you back to has a location for parents where they can visit it as well. And so if you share that out to parents, there's a specific spot where parents can go to get help as well.
And you might even want to share that site, stopbullying.gov, with your guidance counselors in your buildings.
So we also need to talk about, there's different bullying roles. And I think this is the part where the kids don't always have these terms and definitions. And so in order to talk logically about bullying with a student, we have to understand the roles. And so first of all, there's obviously the kid who bullies. And the kid who bullies also has risk factors. And Stephanie and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. But the kids who bully, they're actually most of the time or sometimes very well connected. They have a lot of social power. And they like to dominate other kids or other students, even if they're bigger than they are sometimes. But the interesting part of this, bullies can also be, and I'm misusing the word bully. I shouldn't call a person bully, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But a kid who bullies can also be isolated from peers. They can be depressed, they can be anxious, and they can have low self-esteem. And that's what kind of pushes them to bully others. But they also may have difficulties following rules, and they might have low parental involvement in their education or in themselves, period. So those are some factors that for kids who bully. Kids who are bullied, they're seen as different usually by others and seen as possibly weak. They can also be, just like the kids who bully, they can be depressed, anxious, and have low self-esteem, and they're less popular and have limited friends. And so those are some characteristics of the two different, and as you could hear, some of the characteristics are the same for both the kids who bully as well as the kids who are bullied. Here's some more roles. The kids who assist. Now, these are the kids that may not think that their behavior is bullying, but in reality, the definition of bullying, they are assisting with that. So the kids who assist, they don't initiate, but they join in the bullying. So these might be the kids that say, well, I didn't start it. Well, is their behavior still bullying? Yes. The kids who reinforce. These are the kids who don't join in, but they give them the audience. They may not actually join in at all, but they stand there and watch.
Or they watch, or they laugh, or they...
Right. And their behavior while watching or laughing is an actual encouragement to the bully. And so these kids, you're really going to have to sit down and talk about how that is actually enforcing the bullying. Then we have the outsiders, and these are the ones who don't participate or support, but they also don't say anything. And these are the kids who are maybe a little bit afraid to get involved at all. And those are the ones who maybe don't want the bullying to turn around on them, so they don't say anything, and they may turn a blind eye. Now, is that bullying? No, but it's important that they understand their role in this as well. Then there's the kids who defend, and these are very few, whether you're talking an elementary or high school level, because they're afraid of that social aspect. But these are the ones who confront the kids who are bullying and may come to the defense of the others who are being bullied.
And probably if we can focus some praise on those kids, and that just encourages kids to stand up and defend more and more. I know I have a friend whose outspoken daughter does this a lot, and she gets high praise at home for it, and they say, keep doing it, keep standing up for those kids that are being picked on.
And I know, if you think of even in our adult life, in that sort of situation, how would you react, and how hard would that be to stand up? So really highlighting those kids that are able to do that is huge, I think. But it is a tough move. So what can be done about bullying? What can we do to help combat bullying? So first of all, prevention is the key. So when we talk about prevention, we have to think about the roles of bullying and the fact that we can't always focus on just the kid that's being bullied. Because if we're going to prevent this, we have to prevent the bullying from happening. So one of the biggest things that, and the website focuses a lot on this too, is we can't label the bully as a bully. And that's why I was trying to really avoid using the word bully in association with a kid. If you label a kid and say he's a bully or they're a bully, they own that and feel like they can't really change that behavior. They recognize that it's just who they are and they can't change it. But if you label the behavior as a bullying behavior, that is something that they can see can be changed and can be manipulated to be something that's not bullying. So, you can say, oh, so-and-so is a bully, and that's going to say that that person can't change. But if you say, this behavior that you're doing, that's bullying, how can we change that? Then it opens the door for other possibilities. Whereas if you label the kid as a bully, it kind of closes that door. So instead of focusing on the behavior, instead of focusing on the person, you focus on the behavior that can be changed with all of the roles. So the child who is bullied, how can the behavior that they're doing, or how can some of the things that they're doing be changed so that they don't get bullied so often? And that's a tough one. I mean, especially because those kids are usually introverts anyway, and so they're going to have a hard time talking through some of this stuff. Talking to the child who is bullied, one of the biggest things here is that they may not recognize their behavior as bullying behavior. They may not see it because they maybe see it at home, or they see it constantly in their lives, and that's just how they associate and how they think things happen. And so talking through that is very important. And then even those children who kind of, those other roles that we talked about where they watch the bullying or they get involved with the bullying, and their comment is usually, well, I didn't start it, so I'm not being the bully. In reality, they are. And so you need to talk to them about those different roles and how it does emphasize the bullying.
Just make them more aware of what's going on, and really asking them how they're feeling when they're doing that to someone.
Right. And again, I want to direct you back to this site because it gives you some great vocabulary terms to help talk through that with your kids. So,
and I think that's a time to talk about the different levels, the different age groups with bullying. Little preschoolers, I know we have a lot of preschool parents out there. They just say, oh, he's mean, or I feel sad, and really teaching the kids some better vocabulary terms to describe things can help us out as adults to even know how to help them.
Especially at that young age, because then they can kind of identify more instances with the different vocabulary and then going deeper. So what can we do with kids who bully? And again, we're not calling them a bully, we're calling them kids who bully, identifying the behavior. We want to make sure the kid knows what the problem behavior is. And again, that's going back to that stopbullying.gov to outline the vocabulary and say, okay, your behavior, and you got to be very specific. You have to say, when you constantly go and harass this kid, whatever you're saying to them, you have to be specific about what they're doing, and then talk about how to change that and how to make that different. And show kids that bullying is taken seriously. And so with this, I would tell you, if you know or have been reported or seen an instance of bullying, you need to take that to your cooperating teacher or to a counselor within the school.
Or principal. And that's different based on your school. So every school will have a different policy. And I think schools really have stepped up to make those policies in recent years.
Right. And I think that, a lot of times we just say, well, they were being mean. Well, if you see it happening consistently, like we talked about repeatedly, it definitely needs to be addressed, and kids need to know that it's taken seriously within the school system.
Well, and I think a lot of those times that we mentioned that bullying's happening, it's not when the classroom teacher's going to see. So they really rely on paras to be able to communicate that back. And even, I know at my former schools, we wouldn't have the same teachers on recess duty every day. So if something's happening every day, well, the classroom teachers might not know that it's that consistent, but you paras are the eyes and the ears that can help out with that.
You guys are in the trenches for real.
Yes.
Another thing is you can work with a child to understand some of the reasons he or she bullies people. There's a core reason why these kids are doing this, and to get to that core reason, they're not going to have the idea or understanding how to go evaluate where this is all coming from. And that's going to be something that probably a counselor is going to need to work through with them. But identifying that in themselves is very important. This also, I think, is very important. You need to involve the kid who bullied in making amends or repairing the situation. I think sometimes with an adult, going to that other person and making them face-to-face talk through things with the person they're bullying is probably one of the most effective things that they could do, because they're actually having to see the pain in that other child's eyes. Now, sometimes I get it. Maybe they're not ready for that, because that fuels the fire in some instances, but that's another thing that can help prevent bullying.
And lots of times you do this when they're isolated from all their friends and their audience.
Yes.
That they're getting this praise from. And when they can really look someone else in the eye and say that they're sorry, it can kind of start to hit home. Also with this in my classroom, oftentimes if a student did something to hurt someone else's feelings or destroy property or whatever it might be, that one of the consequences was to do kind deeds for that person. So
yeah, and I think it's important for you, seeing that you are out at recess, you are in these unstructured times, to maybe make a plan of a few things that you could do to have them face that in the moment, I think. And you can get some of those resources again from the stopbullying.gov site. There's some resources in there for you as well.
And when we have some positive consequences, like, to do kind deeds or whatever, really talking to kids, now, how do you feel when you did that? How do you feel about yourself? Because I think that we'll all agree that they'll start to feel better about themselves and want to replicate that.
Yes, and I failed to mention this one, follow-up. Follow-up is really important, and it goes back to what Steph just said. You need to have them rectify the situation in the moment, but you also need to follow up with them and talk through their emotions from the whole situation. And this is the kids who bully. Again, we have to address both, not just the kid who is bullied, but the kid who is doing the bullying as well, and that's part of the prevention. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the kid who is bullied. What can we do about that? First of all, it's very important for you to listen and focus on the child. And at recess, this is probably hard, but if you're not listening to what they're saying, they're going to feel like their feelings are not validated if they come to tell you about an instance. And so I think it's important, especially with smaller kids, that we get down on their level and really listen to what they have to say.
I think also, we know through educational research that kids need to feel connected to their teachers and all the adults in the school. And so if we can build that relationship with them and really listen to them and make them feel like someone's listening, someone's hearing, it just really solidifies that relationship and sets them on a more positive track.
And hopefully along with that too, if you are that person that they feel comfortable with and they are sure that you're listening to them, then they will go to you with future events that may happen to them later down the road. So you could be that confidant for that child. And then you need to assure the child that bullying is not their fault. I don't know how many times I've heard kids say, well, I'm just stupid or something like that. And they have to know that whatever is happening to them, it was not something that they instigated or not something that was brought upon them because of the way they are. And that's something sometimes hard to do when they've got that in their head, especially when they get older, in the teenage years and things like that, because they've already had that melded into their brains. Also know that kids who are bullied may struggle with talking about this because they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to bring more stuff and more instances on them because they're talking about it.
Or kind of ashamed, or they, nobody's proud of the fact that someone's picking on them. So.
Right. It goes back to this point. They feel like that they've done something to bring that upon themselves.
Or it's embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing.
Yes. And there's some great advice about more of what to do for these kids and with these kids on the stopbullying.gov site. And I've linked that right here in the slide for you. And then work together to resolve the situation and protect the bullied child. And I think, again, this is important and something that you probably can't do out at recess or during lunchtime or on the bus even. But it might be something that you could collaborate with the cooperating teacher or the counselor and help them work through the situation so that they are protected and it doesn't continue to happen to them and make things worse.
And sometimes that even comes down to, is there a spot in the school that isn't being supervised? Maybe in the morning as kids are arriving, there is a hallway that no one can see. Okay, so some schools will wall that off or make it off limits for kids. Kids also know where they're on camera these days and where they aren't. So you have to kind of identify those places too.
Yeah, that's a great example, Stephanie. Thank you. And this one is important too. Be persistent. Don't just don't just listen the first time. Check back with that student. Check back with them. How are things going today? Are things better? And make sure you're checking in with them to see. And that's where sometimes some of these things that Stephanie was talking about can come out about, hey, this is happening a lot in this area of the school. And making sure that you are a confidant for that child. Checking my time here and making sure we're okay. So what can we teach kids to do? And these are the kids that are being bullied. What can we teach them to do? Ignore the bully, but tell an adult. And initially I just had ignore the bully, but I don't feel like that's enough. In the instant, yes, ignore the bully, but then they need to go in and talk to an adult. Tell an authority figure or tell somebody who can help them. Remain civil. Sometimes, if we're in a hurry, like we're lining people up at recess, we have limited time, it's hard to really allot time to one person. But if you can't do it in the moment, seek them out later.
And I think it's in our nature to attack the bully or attack the child who is bullying.
Yes.
And instead we have to remain calm and civil, knowing that student has something going on inside too. Then that's why they're acting out.
We're talking about us, but I think again, we need to go back to the student so we can remind them in the situation, don't play into it and remain civil to the person that's bullying them.
It's just
don't feed the fire.
Well, and if it gets physical, we know that if the kid retaliates, they get kicked out of school too, right? I mean, and I know that that's a hard situation, but when things turn physical, you don't want to sink to their level. You stay strong and stay high.
Yep. And then you have them focus on the ones that are their friends, and help them look for things that they enjoy. Because those conversations about being bullied can be pretty rough. And so if you can kind of redirect them towards the end of your conversation, I would say to look towards things that they enjoy about themselves.
And I think just look, I'm sorry, I'm getting right into this one. Maintain that solid group of friends or find a friend. We found out through Columbine that every kid just needs one friend. One friend can make the difference. So if you think of the kids that you see every day with no one to play with on the playground, get them one friend, find them one friend, talk to a kid who might also be alone on the playground and say, hey, this kid has something in common with you, and try to link them up, because one friend makes all the difference in the world.
And I think this is important too when we talk, because before we talked about areas of like the hallway and things that are not well monitored. But if you encourage them to travel more in packs. And again, this is not preventing or resolving the situation, but it is helping the students who are bullied to kind of find some ways to, I wouldn't say eliminate, but reduce the struggles with bullying. Encouraging and building the child's self-esteem, find ways to help them feel better about themselves and to help them be encouraged that who they are is great. And we can do that as adults. We can help them find those things that are good about themselves. So let's have a conversation or a little time here to talk about some of the details we've talked about. Some of the details that we just talked about with the people that are bullies and the people who bully and the people who get bullied, are you able to recognize a few kids in your district? And if so, what can you do to help those kids? I'm going to give you just a minute. What's that? While you're discussing here, I'm going to pull up our last video here. Does anybody want to share your discussion or share some points?
Or ask a question about bullying, or maybe there's an instance that we haven't talked about yet today, or...
I didn't get my timer for good wait time, but I can wait.
I think that I'll say right now, bullying is not an easy thing to tackle and to try to make a difference in, but it's one of the most important, I think, to really affect how kids feel. So hopefully we're all willing to take on that task. And it's one that you shouldn't do alone. Talk to your principal, other teachers in your school, and the counselors about policy. So if you don't already know the policy, get in touch with that's really important for you.
And a couple important things that you should remember from today's presentation is, number one, it's great and we should focus on the person being bullied, but we also need to talk about preventative measures and focus also some of our attention on the people bullying and why they're doing it, and process through all of that with them as well. And that's the only way to prevent it. And
not just in a punitive punishment way, but really getting at the root of what's going on with them emotionally that takes them to that place. Yes, there may be consequences for those actions, but if we don't get to the root of it, it's not going to stop. And since you guys are in the trenches, another important thing is to prepare yourself. Have a backpack full of resources and tools that you can use with those kids in the moment, and to help both the bully and the person being bullied. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing before I'm going to leave you with this video. So as soon as this video is over, you're welcome to hang up. But I want to remind you, if you did not register, please go back to the Pairs of ESU 8 website and register so that we just have your information in that, okay? Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to share before we show this video? Great. Well, thanks for attending. Thank you guys so much. This is a clip. It's actually a Burger King ad that was out, and I think it really puts into context what bullying can be. So
scrawny, chubby, short,
queer,
getting caught up in bullying.
I'm in trouble here. Give me a second.
Bullying, it's so easy because you're just glad that you're not being bullied.
It's been hard for me to stand up for other people because I feel like I'm already a target.
It's just easier to do nothing.
stop.
Fine.
Dude, ow.
Fine.
Stop.
Fine.
Ow, stop.
Do you have any friends?
Yes, I heard you.
What are you even doing here? It's almost too easy.
Stop.
Come on, come on.
I get it.
Maybe you are a little bit more.
Oh.
You think you're special? One more Virginia meal.
Dude, stop.
You're fine. Oh.
I just opened it up and it's all smashed.
Did you order bullied or unbullied?
Bullied or unbullied?
Yeah.
Do you have a manager that I can speak to? Because that doesn't even make any sense. Hi, your manager.
Hi, how's it going?
I was given this.
Did you bully this burger?
Well, yeah. This is a defenseless Whopper Junior. It can't defend itself.
I don't mean anything by it.
It's just for laughs.
Just for laughs.
Just give me my burger, man. What the is going on here?
What are you? Is there something wrong with you?
Because that's clearly what happened.
Can't be serious. Had you seen me bullying this burger, would you have stood up and said something?
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah. What's your name?
Reese.
Hi, Reese.
We're just having fun.
You having fun? He's not having fun. So therefore, I think you guys should just leave him alone.
Later. This feels better to me.
Have you ever been like messed with before?
Oh my god. Like the ideal world is where if somebody else sees like something weird happening that they'll come over and be like, hey, this is not okay.
Yeah.
To feel defenseless, that's one of the worst things in the world.
Chelsea came and she would just tell them that it's not okay because it isn't.
Something I'll never forget is my friend standing up for me.
I've been that kid, so if I see it, I'm gonna do something about it. And I hope there's more people out there like that.
All right, so staggering statistic, if you ask me. So thank you guys very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. See you next month.
Thank you.